Hello, I'm Dennis with Wildwood TV Lift Furniture. Today we're going to do the installation of one of the 360 TV lift beds. So you can see that I've gotten all the parts into the room. I've got the footboard kind of set away from the headboard, got the headboard, got the rails, all the parts that came with it. Here's the mechanism in a couple of boxes, a white box that says Nexus 21 and a cardboard box. So now that we're kind of set up in the room, we're going to go ahead and get ready to put this together. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to put the rails in and the supports, slats that go across the rails. I've got this kind of basically set in the room where I want it because, you know, it'll be heavy by the time I'm done and I won't want to move it a lot. And I've also got the footboard more or less 82 inches from the headboard just because that's the size of the rails on a queen size and a king size, and that'll help in positioning. So I'm going to take these rails. You'll notice that there's some posts that protrude from a metal plate on the rail itself, and that's going to slide right into these slots that are on this that's attached to the footboard. Okay, and I've also got a power driver because I'm going to show you a little trick. Sometimes these are hard to get in. First thing I'm going to do is just kind of take that and slide it into the elongated hole there, and now I'm just going to kind of push that down. Now sometimes it's a little bit hard to get that to drop all the way down to where it needs to. Now that one did, so I'll show you on the other side. So that dropped all the way in, so that's nice and tight. Now moving up here to the headboard, I'm just going to get it kind of in position. And this spacing is really paramount that it be right. Okay, so now I've got that started. Okay, so now that's going to be a little bit of a tough one to get all the way to go down in. Well, that one went in too. But if it's hard for you to get that to sink down into the bottom of that lobe, take your power driver and just back these screws off ever so slightly. I'm talking maybe a quarter of an inch at the most. And that will just loosen that. It'll just loosen that plate and allow that to drop in pretty easy. But then it's important that you just then tighten that back down. So now I'm going to go put the rail on the other side. Okay, now from the rails you're going to find attached to the rails in some shrink wrap, some hardware. There's some inch and a quarter screws and then some 5/8 inch panhead screws. To finish the rails up, I'm going to take those four 5/8 inch panhead screws from this plastic bag, and you will notice that there's a hole right here. And I'll take that 5/8 inch screw, and I'm just going to run that screw into that. It goes through both plates and into the wood, and that really locks that into place. So I'll go around and do all the three other corners, and then we'll move on to the rails. Okay, now in each one of these slats, you're going to see some T-nuts. Now on a queen size, there will be one T-nut in the middle. On a king size is what we're putting together here today. There will be two T-nuts on each one. And they will accept, I'm going to the opposite side of the T-nut, they'll accept these legs. And so I'm just going to thread them in. And I'm going to go ahead and do this on all four of my slats before I move on. I kind of like to get those kind of even with the slat. I guess it really doesn't matter, but anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get those in, and I'll just go ahead and do the other slats just like this one. Okay, now I'm ready to put those four slats across these rails. I just want to make sure that the bed, the headboard and the footboard basically line up, you know, that it's not askew. So if I need to shift this at this point just a little bit, just shift it. If I want to move the bed closer to the wall or whatever, this would be a good time to do that. Okay, so now that I've got it basically square. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you know, you'll be able to see it with your eye. I'm going to go ahead and take these slats, and you'll notice that on these rails, there's some pockets that have been cut out of this hardwood piece, the ledge that these slats will hang on. And then from that same hardware bag that I had used for securing the rails, there will be 8 of these 1 1/4 inch screws, and I'll just use that in that hole, and I'll just go to both sides, and I'll just hold that slat in that pocket of the rail, and then I'll do the other 3. All right, now we're going to go to the mechanism box, which will say Nexus 21, and then you'll also have a cardboard box, which is some hardware for attaching the TV to the mechanism. I'm going to set that to the side for just a minute. I'm going to go ahead and open this, this mechanism box. In this box, you're going to find some written instructions. And you can go ahead and follow these written instructions step by step. They'll follow the video. But I do want to just point out on the second page here, there's a list of some additional tools that you're going to need for the installation of this particular mechanism. So you'll need that power screwdriver, which we've used already, a Phillips screwdriver, a tape measure, a 10 millimeter socket, and a 10 millimeter wrench, whichever one you have access to. The other tools that you're going to need, Allen wrenches and such, they're in the mechanism. Okay, you're going to find hardware for putting this particular mechanism into the bed in a couple of spots. Most of them will be right here in this socket or this pocket, and it'll say L50 hardware. In fact, we're going to need some stuff from that here on this next step, this step one. And then I'm going to use this lift column, which is this center column here. And then there is a base right here that will attach to this column, so we're going to do that right now. But what I'm going to do is, from this hardware pack, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find within this pack, it's listed as FHMS, and this is all in the instructions too, 6x16. So I'm going to need the FHMS 6x16, and then there are some Allen wrenches in one of these bags as well, so I'm going to find that. Okay, and I found them, and there are two size Allen wrenches. I'm just going to grab the smaller one for this step. I'm going to go ahead and put this back into this bag, and now I'm going to set this bag aside for a minute. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this hardware, the FHMS 6x16, 4 of them, and I'm going to take this base plate, and I'm going to attach this. You'll notice on this column it says front. It also has a wire that protrudes off, and then off the bottom, I'm going to put this base, which kind of has an L shape, and I'm going to put the L shape toward what will be the back. And so I'm going to just thread that through here. So I'm going to put all 4 of those in. And it's a tapered head, so it will center it right where it needs to be, so you don't need to worry about centering it or anything. Okay, I've got all of those machine screws in and tight. Now I'll use this Allen wrench in a later step, so I'm going to keep track of it. Okay, now I'm going to take this column and base and set it right down into this cavity of the footboard. You'll notice down here on the bottom that there are 4 holes. That one's a little hard to see because it's been painted over a little bit, but the 4 holes, those 4 holes will line up with the 4 holes in this base, just like that. So now I can see the holes in the wood, and it's lined up with the base. And then from that same hardware pack that I had been using, you're going to find some hardware that's called THWS 10x3/4. Again, if you follow the instructions, the written instructions, it's all written in there. And I'm going to take 8 of those out for right now. There's more than 8, but they'll be used in a later step, so I'll hold on to those. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach that base to the end of this footboard on this backside first. That will pull it nice and tight up against the footboard. So I'm just going to reach down inside there. Okay, and I'm going to anchor that right to that footboard. Now, as long as you've got those 4 holes in the base lined up with the bottom, then everything else is just going to line up nicely. So I'm just going to go ahead and there are holes that are pre-drilled there for these screws. Now I've got the 2 top ones, and I'm just going to get the 2 bottom ones in. Okay, now that I've got it attached to the back of this footboard, I'm going to start attaching them down into the holes that are, again, they're pre-drilled. So I'm just going to kind of start that. And then I'll just my drill and thread that in so it's nice and tight. And I'm going to go ahead and put all 4 of these in. So that will be 8 screws total that are holding the base of this mechanism, this column, against the cabinetry. Okay, the next step will be to, right underneath this, where it says swivel model, you're going to find a couple of kind of metal clamp pieces of hardware here that have some padding. And I'm going to grab both of those, and I'm going to use the same hardware, this THWS 10 by 3/4. I'm going to use a couple of those. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the small clamp here, the shallower one, and I'm just going to slip that behind. I'll have to kind of push that away, and then I'm going to slip it down. You're going to see some pre-drilled holes right here. I'm going to line that up with those pre-drilled holes. And then I'm going to take this larger clamp, and it's going to kind of wrap around and then line up with the holes on the smaller clamp. And then again, using some of those same screws that we had used in the previous step. Just going to grab 2 of those. There will still be some left over that we'll use a little later here, but use those. And now going through both of the holes on this clamp and into the pre-drilled hole on the cabinetry. And that just kind of will tighten that column up against this footboard. Okay, I'm going to set those screws that I had been using aside, and I'm going to, from this area now, I'm going to find this package that says swivel model L50. Now I've got the swivel. Now the swivel actually comes apart. There's kind of a top and a bottom. I'm just going to kind of work that until that unplugs. I'm going to set the top of this swivel just aside. We'll put that on in a minute. And now from this same area, I'm going to find 4 more of these screws, these FHMS 6x16s. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach this swivel's, the base part, right to the top of the column using those 4 machine screws. So I'll just go ahead and set that in place. You'll see it'll line up with some holes right there in the top. Okay, now to attach this, I'm going to use the hardware, and then I found that small Allen wrench we had used earlier. So you'll use that small Allen wrench, and then I'm just going to thread that right down in there. And I'll go ahead and attach all 4 of these. Get that nice and lined up. And I'll go ahead and tighten these down. I'll snug them right down. Now I've got this part, this swivel top that we had just separated, and I'm going to set it back on top, and these plugs will plug right into that receptacle, just like it was. Okay, that's plugged in. And now you'll notice that there are some unthreaded holes in here, and there's some pre-installed machine screws down in there that will take this Allen wrench again. So you're not finding any hardware, you're just using that Allen wrench to tighten those up. And you'll want to just, there's 4 of them, and they'll go right into that lower part of the base and then just tighten right up. So I'll just go ahead and tighten those all up. You'll feel them snug up. And again, they're in the there's 8 holes here, but they're in the ones that are in the pattern closer to the footboard here, and they're unthreaded. All right, now from the hardware bag that I've been pulling hardware, I'm going to find there's some Velcro straps, and then some zip ties. There's 4 of each, and I'm going to be using this wire management sheath that's just right here in the box. And then back in this area where I had pulled that swivel, there's a couple of cords. One of them is a traditional power cord, but the other one is a 6-pin cord. It has kind of 6 pins on either side, and I'm going to use that first here, and I'm just going to attach it. It's called the motor cable, and I'm going to attach that motor cable to this cable that comes out of that swivel. So I'm going to go ahead and attach that, and it can only go in one way. Either end will go in, but it just goes in one way on this, and it'll clip in nice and tight. And I'm going to take this auxiliary cord out of the plastic bag and unwind it, and then I will put that sheath around both of these cords kind of to hold them in place. Okay, now I've wrapped this sheath around both that motor cable and that auxiliary cable, and you can see I've just kind of got it up here within 1.5 inches of the top, and I've got it all kind of encased in that padded sheath. Okay, now with the sheath around those wires, I'm just going to take one of these Velcro straps. The part that catches, or the catch part, I'm going to slip that behind here, just kind of right up here on the top, and I'm going to kind of pull that nice and tight around that. You can use these Velcro straps and the zip ties kind of however you feel like you need to just kind of hold this in place. So I kind of got that in place there. I'm going to take now one of the zip ties right there, and I'm going to kind of feel down here, and I can feel where that connection got made right there. I can feel that connection. I'm going to go ahead and put a zip tie right around that so it can't slip below that connection. Just kind of like that, just kind of get out of the way. And then I'll go to the other end and use the Velcro or the zip ties as I see fit. Okay, now the next step, I have found some out of this hardware bag. I found some BHMS 6x12. You can refer to the written instructions if you need to. And then where that hardware has been sitting, I'm going to pull up the rest of this packaging material. I'm going to get this screen support out. Okay, with this screen support, I'm going to now use these two top support brackets. So I'm going to pull both of those out. I've got the BHMS 6x12. This uses the same Allen wrench that I've been using. All right, I'm going to take this screen support and kind of set it on its edge here. And then I'm going to take these top supports and I'm going to set that right on this side here. Now, on this particular footboard, you're going to want this top support to be 3/4 of an inch from the top of the screen support. And that puts it about in the middle of the first slotted hole there. In fact, it's right in the middle of that first slotted hole. And you're going to see that there are four areas where you can put these, the BHMS 6x12, which I had pulled from the hardware pack. And then I'm just going to go ahead and using that same Allen wrench. Let's go ahead and tighten that down. You might want to check your measurement one more time, just kind of get it at 3/4 of an inch from the top of the screen support to the top of this lid support bracket that we're attaching. I'll get these 4 put in on this side, and then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side so that these supports are 3/4 of an inch above the screen support. All right, I've got this screen support all put together like I had explained. The hardware for attaching this screen support to the column is what we're going to do next. And it's actually in this other pocket, and it's in this large swivel pack. And it's the BHMS 6x10. So find that in this large swivel pack, not in that main hardware packaging. So I'm going to pull out 4 of those. This is going to take that same small Allen wrench. So I'm going to just take this right over here now. And I'm going to set this right down on top of that column. All right, now I'm going to take this screen support, and you're going to notice that there's a lot of holes on here, but this back hole was unthreaded. That's where we had tightened this swivel to the column. So I'm going to move it till this slotted hole is in at the next hole, and that's the first threaded hole. So there's really about an inch space between this column, this screen support, and the back of this column. And I'm just going to thread that down in there. I'm not going to tighten that up yet. I'm going to go around and put all 4 of these in. So 2 will be in those diagonally slotted holes in the back, and it's right at the end of that slotted hole. And then I'm going to take these. Now your TV is going to essentially hang on this column. And what we want to do is just try and visually make sure that this is square to the footboard's end here. So again, not fully tight yet. And now I can tell that I'm just going to this has just a little bit of movement. And so if it's moved too far, if it's moved a little bit here, 1/8 of an inch is going to be, 5/8 of an inch out here. So what I'm doing is I'm just looking at the edge of this footboard, and I'm just making sure that that gapping is really about the same. I mean, it's not that it will work. The TV is going to work either way, but it will just allow that TV to be even with the footboard as it comes out. So basically, I'm just lining this up with the footboard to make sure that this screen support is in alignment. Okay, now I've got those all tightened up. All right, using that same Allen wrench, small Allen wrench, I'm going to come right to this footboard, and you're going to notice that there's a cabinetry piece that's attached right on this to this side of this column. I'm just going to back that one screw out, and I'm going to hold on to that. We're going to need to put that back in. Then I'll just lift this electronics panel out. Now I'm going to take that electronics panel, which you're going to see has several pre-drilled holes, and I'm just going to set that right here. Now, from the hardware, I'm going to find this large swivel pack. I'm going to pull the connection out, and then from that same bag, I'm going to find an 1.25 inch wood screw. So that I'm going to find now, back from this other hardware pack, the main hardware pack, I have found a couple of the FHWS 10 by 1 3/4. There's 2 of them. They're wood screws. And then I'm going to find a pack that has 2 5/8 inch panhead screws. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach this electronics connection to it. I've now found the RF kit that will have your remote control in there. But what I'm after right now is this receiver. So I'm going to pull that out. I'm going to hold on to that because there's a wire in there I'm going to use here in just a minute. And then from underneath this styrofoam right here, toward this end, there is the L50 control panel. So this connection that was in that swivel pack, it's going to go into this top hole right up near the handle and where we had disconnected it from the footboard. I'm going to grab my screwdriver here, and this will use this 1.25 inch screw. Put it right down through that hole, goes right into that pre-drilled hole. I'll just tighten that right down onto that electronics panel. Now this control board, it goes on the other side from where we just attached that. There's 2 pre-drilled holes right here. This is going to use 2 of these FHWS 10 by 1 3/4. They'll drop right down through this hole. The AC power is toward me, or what will be toward the bottom. Now I'll just thread that right into that pre-drilled hole. And there's a second one right down here. Just tighten that down. Now the last part will be this receiver, this little square box. And I'm going to use those 5/8 inch panhead screws. You'll see that lines up right there. Here's where the ports are for plugging things in toward the top. And when I say top, I'm talking about up toward the handle. I'm just going to tighten that down into those pre-drilled holes, and you've got all the electronics in place. Okay, I'm back to this RF kit that I had gotten this receiver, or this connection from, and I had mentioned that there was a wire in there you're going to need. It's just a short little wire. I'll keep everything else back in there. Again, that's where the remote control is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach this wire to the port that's closest to the control box. And it can only go in one way. Either end will work, but it'll only go in one way. And I'm going to connect it to A1. And then I'm going to take the connection from this electronics device and put it into 1. It'll just go into that 1 right there. And then from the box, I'm going to just find the traditional cord. And that'll just connect into the bottom. And so everything is connected like that. And again, if you refer to the instructions, it has a layout of everything. Okay, I'm getting ready to mount that electronics panel back in, but I'm going to take this sheath that we had done earlier, and I'm just going to set it up over the side here because we're going to plug those wires in. Let's get those out of the way. Now I've got the electronics board, or electronics panel, and I'm going to slip that back in. You'll see that there's a groove down there on the floor of this footboard cavity. It will just go down, it'll just sit right in place. And then I'm going to take that same furniture connector and it'll go right back into that hole, and I'll tighten that down. And now it's just time to make all of the connections. So what I'm going to do is take these sheathed wires again, and there's that 6-pin wire, the motor cable, and it goes right into that receiver. There was that auxiliary cord that was part of the sheath. That goes right above that 6-pin. And now from right over here, I'm going to find a bundle of wires that goes to our controller, our manual controller over here that's been pre-installed. take that off, and that is going to drop down into this control box, and it's into A2. It's right near the end here, or second one over. There's one plug in A1. This goes into A2. And now I'm just going to take the power cord and plug it into our power supply right here. And then I'll take this cord pack from the power strip, and I'm going to run this right down through the hole in the bottom of the footboard. Okay, now from the power strip in the footboard that I've drawn out of the bottom of the footboard, I'm just going to plug that into a receptacle in the home. Okay, with the electronics all attached, now I'm going to, from the main hardware pack, find a packet that's the FHMS 6x12. There's 4 of them. And I'm going to, this will use the same Allen wrench. And now I'm going to find this top plate. And this warning, you'll want to just look at this. As long as you follow our instructions, you'll do it all right. But basically, this will explain how the top is going to go on, but I'll explain that too. But this is a warning that you can look through. Now I'm going to take the FHMS 6x12 and the top plate. And the top plate is going to just sit right on here. There's really just one opportunity for the holes, and these will attach right down into those the screen support. So use that Allen wrench. I'm just going to go ahead and put that on. You'll notice that. Just notice the positioning here as far as these tabs are facing forward. All right, I've got all 4 of those machine screws in there. I've got it all tightened down. Here again, I'm going to want to watch the alignment, make sure that I'm about the same distance from either end to the footboard. And I had done that on those machine screws underneath this in a previous step, but this kind of will qualify that it's been done right, so there's about the same distance there. That means the TV will come out and be even with the front of the footboard. Okay, now I found the headboard lid. The headboard lid will have a couple of holes here, and that will be on the bottom. It'll be up against this. And then from that main hardware pack, I found 2 of these taper pins. They're 1.5 by 1/4 inch taper pins. I don't want to scratch this. This is the top. This is the lid that will lift. So I don't want to scratch this. So I'm going to go ahead and set this right down on the carpeted floor, or you're going to want to put it on some surface that will protect the top, which is going top down, and those holes will be up. And then there's 2 holes that are here, and these taper pins will be threaded into those holes. You'll want to just make sure that they'll kind of thread in at first just by hand, which will help. So I'm just gonna thread those in and get them kind of threaded there. Then I'm going to take my driver and I'm just going to finish screwing them down until the threaded part is, I can't see any more of the threaded part. These taper pins will allow for this top to kind of float on the top of the mechanism in case somebody were to get their fingers underneath. It will just lift up on these taper pins. So now I've got those taper pins installed. And now I'm going to go ahead and raise my mechanism up a little bit. I'll raise my mechanism by just touching the up button on this manual switch over here, and it'll just kind of start to bring that mechanism up. Just going to bring it up a little bit. That'll help me line up these taper pins. The taper pins are not centered in the top, so the bigger portion or the larger measurement side will go toward where your mattress will be. And those taper pins will fit right down into these holes on this top plate. Just like that. Now I'm going to go ahead and run this back down. Okay, now these taper pins also have some adjustability. So I'm going to just kind of look at my gapping here, and I'm just going to push it around to where I need it to be to kind of line everything up. So now I've got my reveals about right. I'm even after maneuvering this. And now I'm even over here. So once I've got that the way that it's flush, it's even, my reveals look good. Now I'm going to go ahead and raise that up. And I'm going to use that 10 millimeter wrench that we talked about early on in the instructions just to tighten it in position. Okay, here are my taper pins, and there are two 10 millimeter nuts right there. And because I've got it all lined up, I'm just going to go ahead and tighten those down. And now that'll hold that in that position that we had adjusted it to, so it was flush with the ends. There's taper pin, or there's 10 millimeter nuts on both sides. We'll go ahead and tighten that down. And like I mentioned, this top just kind of floats on here. It will prevent somebody from getting their fingers underneath there. But while this is up, I'm going to take an opportunity to take one more of these zip ties. I'm going to take this sheath. I'm going to just kind of put this through one of the holes on the bottom of this mechanism. You can just do it however you want. And then I'm just going to zip tie that to that mechanism. That'll just kind of hold it in place. It's not absolutely necessary, it just kind of manages the wires just a little bit better. Okay, so now that's done. Now I'll just go ahead and put this back down and just make sure that that top is still in alignment. If it's not in alignment, I'll loosen those 10 millimeter nuts. I'll make my adjustments again and tighten them back up. But it should stay lined up once. I didn't bump it or anything, so it should just stay lined up there. Okay, now I'm going to give you some general guidelines on mounting the TV to the mechanism. There's a lot of adjustability on the mechanism and the parts that are in this box we'll go over here in a second. And TVs are all slightly different, where this pattern for mounting the vertical bars to it are. So I've got this last cardboard box that has the hardware for mounting the TV to the mechanism. And from this hardware box, I've got some vertical supports that will mount to the back of the TV. And then I've got the TV back plate. Also, you'll find in this box some hardware that we'll use in a minute. I'm going to set this aside. You'll use this for actually latching the TV to the mechanism so the TV can't come off. I'm just going to set that aside. Now, from the hardware bag that we've been pulling all of our hardware from, you'll find another bag that's just an assorted, you'll recognize it. It's the assorted hardware bag for mounting the TVs. There's different diameters, different lengths. We'll go through that when we get there. And then I found BHMS 3/8 by 16, and that will mount the back plate to the mechanism. And you'll notice that I've got this raised all the way up here. So what I'm going to do as a general guideline, I'm going to, and you may need to make some adjustments here, but every TV is slightly different. As a general rule, I'm going to take these vertical mounting bars and I'm going to center them in the TV. So that means on this particular TV, the mounting hardware is quite low. And if I measure here, I'm about 2 3/4. I measure here, I'm about 2 3/4. Okay, so I'm going to just center this in the TV. And that's going to put me quite low on this particular vertical mounting bar. Now I'm going to take some of the hardware here. I'm going to try not to use any of these spacers. Now, if your TV has kind of a pop out that you're trying to get around, you will need to use some of these. Like I said, every one of these are a little different, but there's also some square washers if you need to kind of attach it in some of these slotted areas. So you can just use what you need. I can tell from this I'm going to need the small hardware, and I'm probably not going to need any washers or anything. I'm just going to go ahead and anchor that to the back of the TV. You don't want to screw this too deep or force it too much. You damage the TV. So it should go down. I'm in the second hole here. I'm going to take the other one now and mount it. And that went in tight. I didn't bottom out. There's some washers if you need. And I'm not going over any convex back or anything like that. I'll put this other one in the exact same position, which is going to be the second hole up. All right, now I'm going to take this back plate, and you'll notice that one side just kind of has kind of a bend in it, and the other side is more of a C. this is the bottom of the TV. The C channel will be down toward the bottom. This flange will be toward the top. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to set that into there, slide it all the way up as if the TV were hanging on this. And I'm going to measure from this top hole to the top of the TV. I've got 9 inches. So I can be, when I go over there and take this back plate, or I measure from the hole that closest to 9 inches. So now I'm going to go over to my lift system. And from the top, or from the bottom of this lid, I'm going to measure down, and I am just about 9 1/4 inches down to this particular hole. So I'm going to clear this by 1/4 inch. Like I said, this is a little bit of trial and error, so you're just going to have to kind of figure it out. But I found that if you basically center those vertical bars, and then you take that mounting plate and you put it toward the top, you should get it. You can move those mounting plates or those vertical bars if you need to, and move this mounting plate, but this is just some general guidelines. So now I'm going to take my mounting plate and those 3/8 inch, the 3/8 by 16 hardware pack, and this is going to also require my larger Allen wrench. And I'm going to mount this. Again, the C-shaped is down. And I'm going to mount this in the top one, in that hole that met at that 9 inches or thereabouts. And I will go ahead and tighten that up. And then I'll put all 4 of these in, and then I'm going to test the TV and see if the TV fits. It should be just below the surface or the bottom of this lid. Okay, now I've got that mounted at that distance that we have just talked about. I'm going to just go ahead and remove this, just lift that off those pins for just 1 minute. And now I'm going to take my TV that I've got set. You may need an assistant for this, and you might be able to leave that top on, but I'm just going to go ahead and now lift that TV. These TVs are just lighter and lighter all the time. Now I'm just going to mount it. It was going to be into that very top of that bracket, just like that. I'm going to kind of make sure I'm centered there. Now I'm going to take that top and set it on there. Now the TV has to be below the top. It can't hold the top up at all, or else the top won't come to rest or seat properly as it goes down. So now I'm just going to take those pins, drop those pins back into those holes. Now, if I have distance here, which I do by about 1/4 inch, everything's going to work great. So this will go down. If when you put that on, this is being held up by your TV, you're going to have to make some adjustments on those vertical bars. As those vertical bars get moved up on the TV, it's going to drop the TV's screen down. So now, as we go to shut it, I've got 1/4 inch, which is perfect. Okay, it looks good. Everything is still lined up like I had it. Everything is seating properly. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let it go all the way back up. I'm just going to get the TV centered. I'm a little close on this side. It's because I had just set it in place. All right, now what I want to do is I just want to take my tape measure and get this centered. I'm going to slide the TV over just a little bit. Okay, I've got that TV centered, 7/8 on this TV. Now I had mentioned as we were unpackaging from the cardboard box, there are these extra pieces. I'm just going to kind of show you. I'm going to thread that in to the bottom, so there's your orientation. So without bringing those up too far, I'm just bringing it basically flush. That machine screw is just coming basically flush through that. I'm just going to go ahead and set that onto the next possible slot. I'll hold that in place, and then I'm just going to tighten that up. And essentially, you'll see what it's going to do is it's going to clamp it against the bottom of that back plate, and I'll do the same thing on the other side. All right, I've got this all installed. It's working great. I do want to point out that you're going to have a little bit of hardware left over, and that's okay because this is how we'll mount this to our cabinetry, our bed. But there's one piece here that you're going to find in there, and it says it's important. It's a height limit insert. The height limit insert is just not used in our particular installation. I will just briefly explain so you know what it is. You'll see that it's a little electronic insert. You can raise this to the height limit that you want. If this were in some other piece of cabinetry, it might go up and hit a ceiling fan. So you can insert this down into the control box. There's one more port for it. You raise this to the level you want it. You insert this, and that limits how high it's going to come. It's not really used in our instructions. If you need any more information, or if you do have a height restriction on these TV lift beds, you'll need to give us a call. This is really not used in our installation, but I just thought I'd point that out. You'll also notice you have a remote control that controls the TVs up and down. You just press it once and it will raise and lower, and that will make it really nice and easy. You always have the manual switch that's on the front of the footboard. But that concludes our video on the installation or the setup of this 360 TV lift bed. We hope that these instructions have helped, along with the written instructions. And certainly if you have any questions, you can call our customer service number that will be at the bottom of this screen. We appreciate your business and hope this video has helped.